Welcome to the High Vibration Reset. I'm your host, Ciara Conlon, and I am delighted to have the lovely Amanda Grace as my guest today. Thank you for joining us, Amanda.
Hiya, Ciara. I'm delighted to be here.
Very good. So I'm going to hand over to you to get going. If you wouldn't mind, Amanda, telling us a little bit more about you and the work that you do.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Ciara. Well, yeah, my name is Amanda Grace. I am an artist. I'm a coach and facilitator, and I work primarily with journaling. And journaling is everything from the journaling that you would think of, which is pen to paper, all the way through to using art materials, collage, and words combined in creative ways to express yourself on paper. It's very much it's a creative practice that is a vehicle for spiritual growth, really. And the women who are drawn to my work are generally women who have spent an entire lifetime listening to everybody else except for themselves, because we're conditioned that way as women, especially of a certain generation, or certain generations, I should say. And so this is a journey, like I facilitate a journey of coming back home to ourselves, learning to hear ourselves, learning to trust ourselves, to obey ourselves, um, and coming back home to a more spiritually true and fulfilling version of who we are. Because at the end of the day, we're the ones who have to sleep at night with who we are being in the world. And if that who is not, you might say, spiritually aligned with your inner, landscape, with who you are and truly are at your core, you're going to be disturbed. And that disturbance can come up as anxiety or any kind of behaviors or anything at all. But at the end of the day, you do know. It's just about trusting that knowing. And so that's really what I help women do, is to get closer to that knowing and learn how to trust it. And, eventually act on that knowing. So I do that through art journaling that I teach online. I host weekly journaling sessions online, which is, it's not where I teach the journaling, but I host space for
Mm,
journaling, weekly online and also in person here in Killaloe, where I live. And I work one to one with people as well. So that's how I've been doing
very
my work
good.
lately. Yeah.
Very good. I did sign up to one of your workshops a good few years ago now, but unfortunately, COVID got in the way of that. So we'll have to rectify that. Um,
Yeah. Oh my God, it must have been my art journaling workshop. Would you believe I haven't come out to offer them in person since the pandemic. I got thrown myself after, the pandemic threw me in a completely different direction, trying to save the business as such. And
Absolutely.
many of
Yeah.
us didn't.
Yeah. So
Um,
maybe this is a nudge to host another one of those in person. Maybe it's the time.
oh, it definitely is. And I am being called to it. I currently I'm also having an executive function. There's an executive function element to it that I experienced a pretty severe burnout at the end of 23. And with everything now, like where we are now, the middle, whatever, May 26th, I got diagnosed in January this year for ADHD. I finally went through the process after several years of trying and failing to even find an assessment. And I'm looking forward to trialing myself on medication, Kira, because I find that that has kind of become a big part of my everyday, is like wanting to do something but being frozen to the spot, just with an executive dysfunction around actually making it happen.
Okay. Okay.
So yeah,
Interesting.
there's a few things that I've said, well, let me get medicated first and see what difference that makes. And then maybe I can cope
Okay. Okay.
with with that project. But I
Very
definitely
good.
want to come back. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you say that the process, Amanda, is about coming home to
Mhm.
ourselves. So have you come home to yourself? Is that what you feel has happened over the past few years?
Dear.
She's grinning here in case you're listening and not watching.
Yeah, I have. There. Like, where do I even begin? There's a very big story. I'm in a very significant chapter of my story right now, and I'm very busy living it, and I haven't really, I'm living it and kind of processing it, but I haven't shared about it yet. So, but it pretty much, but where does a coming home story begin? But I do know that, like, oh, I could point it at 2009, but I could point it at any time in my life where I just felt something was wrong. Something is wrong. But of course, the training that we get is something is wrong. It must be me. So much of my journey has been about trying to fix the me that I thought was responsible for all this wrongness. And of course, then anybody who may have gone down that path, as we all discover, is, we fix all the things, or at least make a good attempt at fixing them, only to be like, hey, you know, how come I've lost like 100 pounds and I'm still over here fucking hating myself? Like, what's going on with that? How come I got married and now, I'm not happy? How come I had the baby? I had the job. I did the things. I did the things I was supposed to do that was supposed to result in me feeling like I'm doing this. And I still am over here having done it, but I don't, something still feels wrong. So that wrongness, I guess, is where it would have began for me. I called it a crisis of wrongness. It just felt like everything in my life, or anything at least that I held up to the light, just seemed to be wrong for me. And so, so much of a journey back home to ourselves is learning, first of all, you know, about how we make decisions. How are you making decisions? Because the decisions were made that have you here. And then understanding those decisions, understanding what we were probably trying to achieve through those decisions, and then examining those things, who said that those things were important, and blah, 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 and unpacking all of that so we get back to the point of realizing actually nobody explicitly said it, but I did pick that up as a message in this life and took it very much as gospel and have been living off that. So I think, to answer, if there is a way of answering a question about what does it mean to come home, it is very much about, do you know I don't know, the kind of an anecdote about Michelangelo and David, when Michelangelo was asked how did he sculpt such perfection as David, and the answer was, well, I didn't. He was already in there. I just chipped away
Mm,
everything that wasn't necessary.
yeah,
It's kind of
yeah,
like that.
absolutely. And that's, yeah, it's one of the things I always say about happiness. It's not about finding happiness. It's removing all of the weight and the things that cause the unhappiness. Or even when it comes to raising our vibration, our high vibration, it's actually a lot of the low vibrational crap that is damaging us rather than us trying to search. So, you talk about all of the things that all of the, let's say, expectations or standards we're holding ourselves to, all of the rules that we think we should be adhering to. How, have you yourself, or how do you help women realize what's important and what's not important?
A good way into realizing that is to learn about, and you don't really have to go looking for that, but just pay attention to what upsets you. Um, and you will learn a lot. And when I say what upsets you, I don't just mean like upsets you in terms of like that there's, that there is an obvious upset. Basically, what makes you uncomfortable? What makes you want to, for the ground to open up and swallow you? What conversations are you avoiding? What conversation are you not having? Who do you hate? Who annoys you? Like, so it's kind of about finding out, like, I remember one thing in particular, like, at this point now, I get not specific, I was going to say suspicious. I get curious when I have a visceral reaction to somebody. I get curious because I'm like, oh, look, here comes the mirror. On some level, there is a mirroring happening, and this person is showing me something I'm not ready to see. And that is a great way in. And it's a big part of, let's say, in 12 step, the ongoing maintenance is very much an examination of, your disturbances on a day-to-day basis, your little, vagaries and resentments, because it is very revealing to us about who we, what our rules are, and how we feel again about people who break them, and how, so for example, there was something the other day. I was in a situation the other day, and the conversation that arose was that, like, people get angry with things that they may not understand, or have you ever been angry with somebody who, like, for example, somebody who shows up, let's say very casually to a thing, and they, they seem to be having success even though they dress really casually and blah blah blah, blah or whatever. But you think that you have to like present yourself professionally, or else, that kind of way. So, like, you're going to get
How are
annoyed
they
with this
getting away with
person.
it?
Exactly. You're like, I'm hold on, because the rule is that you brush your, and you blah 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 blah. And I've been doing that my entire life. And here, this one's just going to rock up in shorts and t-shirt, and nobody's going to be like, oh, did you see her in her shorts and t-shirt? Except for you. Anyway, so they're the kind of, they're the things, is to watch out for what annoys you. And the step basically in recovery is along the lines of, it's not this, but it's basically, who are you annoyed with, why, and how is it your fault?
So is that not keeping us stuck, though, in that mindset of there's something wrong with me and I need to be fixed?
You would think it would, but in that process, you will discover, if you have a voice that's saying, like, why is it bothering you? You'll discover it's bothering me because it's a threat to my identity, because it's a threat. So you will discover in the unpacking where the neurosis does belong to you, where the part, like, what's yours, because that's what this process is about. It's like, how is it my fault? Well, it's my fault because I keep letting the voice of shame tell me things about my character that aren't true. But every time I come into a situation where that might be true, I get, I lose my power. So you kind of, it's not a victim. It doesn't keep you in a victim sense, in the sense of there's nothing I can do about it, I just have to suck it up. It is in the sense of, well, why is it my fault? In other words, where am I not holding my boundary? Or what stories am I repeating and holding not only myself to, but the rest of the world, to the degree that if they don't play by my rules, I actually get upset. So you are discovering your own wounding within that. And it is a compassionate practice at the end of the day.
So it's more about taking responsibility than staying stuck in the victim, as you say.
Exactly. And it's a way of giving back, taking back power. And it can be very, very liberating to reposition, to rediscover that the power is actually on your side. You do have power if you choose to use it. Now, of course, you can choose not to use it and have a little pity party, because that's fun sometimes. And
Or you
sometimes
can choose to just stay disappointed and distracted in your life, which is what, most of us do for a lot of our lives, distracting ourselves. So rather than facing these issues, we just keep busy and keep working.
We
So
can do.
part of your process, Amanda, is that giving it space, this reflection, contemplation, and just allowing, that awareness to give
Yeah.
us some insight.
Yeah, and gathering information over time, it's really important as well to understand. So I think a lot of like really honest self-reflection requires looking at things that are very uncomfortable to look at, because it's like, well, if I accept that, that consequence or whatever, if I just accept what I'm looking at right now, um, I kind of, it's almost in other words, how can I sit in the discomfort of finding out something, or finally looking at something or perceiving something that is really ugly to me about a person that let's say, it might be a relative. And as you're doing your work, you'd be like, okay, so there's this really, there's something that I'm looking at here that is really, really at odds with who I am as a person and the kind of, energy that I want to surround myself with. If we look at that and don't take action on it, it creates, it's just like, it's really uncomfortable. But it's like, over time, you don't have to act on everything that you recreate, but you can build a profile. You could, like, you're gathering information. That's the word you use. And it is information. And over time, we do this work and we're gathering information, and that information we can choose to do with it whatever we want with that information. But without that information, we are making decisions based on imagined realities, things that we wish, ideals.
Or an emotional reaction, which we don't
Yeah,
even know why we are
exactly.
reacting.
So we're kind of making decisions based on sentimentality, feelings, triggers, nervous system, all of that stuff. And they're the kind of decisions that can land you in situations in 10 years' time where you go, how the fuck did I get here? Um, yeah.
And all of this is done through the lens of compassion.
It has to be done. Compassion, witnessing, bravery. It's not a one and done like that. There's no one journaling session or inquiry session that will unlock anything for you, but it could be the one journaling session that was like supported by 1,000 before that finally unlocks. So it can happen in a session, but it is not one session that does it. So yeah, this is a practice. It is absolutely a practice of discernment at the end of the day, learning how to make decisions based on your lived experience, as opposed to some kind of script.
And your method, does it always involve art, or, some type of creativity, or
So,
not necessarily?
yeah, it will always involve some kind of creativity. And that the reason being is because, at its most basic, I would say we have to get past the blank page effect. So when you have somebody sitting with any instrument on a and looking at a blank page, it's very daunting, because most people don't realize that the first act of creation is destruction. And so anybody who doesn't really understand that is afraid of making a mark, whereas anybody who gets that can't wait to make a mark. So like the the ruination of something is where it begins. And anyway, that's just as an aside. But even just to think like an artist in this, so I do teach people how to think like an artist and how to approach journaling in the same way that an artist would approach anything. But so to get you on the page, I am going to use, whether it'll be some kind of symbol. So I will always bring symbology in there. So it could be that we meditate on art, we meditate on poetry. I might get out my basket of symbols. Um, there will be some kind of a prompt that will have you, like, invite you into a contemplation using some external object um, that is going to serve as kind of like that mirror. You're going to project onto that object whatever wants attention, and that will get you on the page. It's a really, really powerful, because without that, I'm asking your brain, your logical brain, the brain that's always trying to control everything. If we engage that brain's going to get stuck in story,
Hmm.
and it's going to get stuck in repetitive telling of the story, and kind of like almost like an obsessive um, uh, attachment to the perspective and all of this. Whereas when we step outside the story and start to engage the other side of our brain, the creative side of our brain, you are now engaging solution creativity. You're engaging the part of the mind that sees more than what's in front of it. Um, it's not um, it's not bound to logic or linearity or time. So, it really is.
For
And
the
when you
bullshit
learn,
story you've been telling yourself for the last 10 years.
yeah. And it's the same mind that, like, Einstein used to be brilliant. Like, it is your genius mind that you're activating. And when we learn how to let that mind come out to play every now and again, and journaling is one of the ways that I do that, you're just keeping your hands busy. And you're kind of doing a Mr. Miyagi thing where you're just like, making marks on a page, and you're making art, but you're not really making art. You're just kind of like following a bunch of, it's how I teach it. I teach you a bunch, I call them dance moves. I just teach you a bunch of dance moves, and then you're basically just having a disco in your journal. But that is engaging the part of your brain that is getting in your way, while
Keeping it
the other
busy.
part of while the other part of your brain is working on the problem. And that's a much longer and it's also a process that requires a witness. So we need compassion, but we need witnessing, we need a guide. We need someone with you when you're having the deja vu moment on the path, and you're like, hold on, were we not just here 6 months ago? Like, did we not take a pass at this before? And you're like, yes, we did. But we were missing information that time. Do you remember?
Wow.
So yeah, and so it's just fascinating. I love it, but 100% is journey work for me. Well, people who work with me, it's journey work.
So the genius mind,
Yeah,
is that the same as your intuitive self, your wise self? Do you see it all as
yeah.
different ways
Uh,
of describing?
this is the part of the mind I'm convinced that, or when I say convinced, or how I understand it, this is the part of the mind who recognizes truth. This is the part of the mind. I don't even think it is the mind, to be quite honest. It is an aspect of self that recognizes truth. It is an aspect of self that is somehow nonverbal, but can give you words. It doesn't speak like so the mind speaks like I'm speaking right now. It'll rattle on, and it'll be quite hyper, and you'll recognize, because it'll talk like I'm talking. Um, Whereas this part of your self reveals things. It shows you things. It doesn't tell you things. It just presents information. As strange as that sounds, but you feel it. It's a feeling, and it's a felt sense, and it's like oh, it's just like an oh. The truth just feels like oh, and there's nowhere to go from that. There's no like the mind coming in going, yeah, but what if blah, blah, blah. It feels just like a place that you land. So yeah.
And is it foolproof? So, or can you see with people where they're bringing in story, where they're bringing in the logical mind?
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely can, and over time you'll learn to feel it as well. Like I still now that doesn't mean that once you learn to spot it, doesn't mean that you are then,
Immune
always
to
going to be able to stop it.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was chatting with someone the other day, and she said she was having a shame spiral, and she was up in her head. And, you know, I was kind of saying to her, you know, come back to the conversation, like come back and we'll talk. And she said, you know, I'm just like the voice, you know, the voice in my head is just telling me to, you know, just calling me a dickhead and telling me that blah, 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 blah. And I'm just trying to get it to I'm trying to get it to stop. And I said, but you're not going to get it to stop. That voice doesn't stop. And that voice's whole job is to, you know, wrap you up in its narrative about you being a disaster. I said, so, you know, if we're going to have to, like, if you're going to get in there, stay in there, tumbling around with this voice, first of all, you're going to lose. It's going to kick your ass because it's, you know, it's almost like, it's on a loop. It's an actual loop. It's a program and it's just going to keep talking. And secondly, when you're in there fighting with it, you're not out here with me, connecting with me. And this is the relation. This is where the healing is. Like, in the actual real world, in the relationship in the real world, like you staying with me and me staying with you is where the relationship is, or where the healing is, not you up in your head trying to fight with the programming that has no off switch. So I can't remember what your question was, but it was like, yes, can you feel, you can absolutely feel it. You can feel it by its impact. You can feel it in your body. You can feel when you're being, quote unquote, taken for a ride, or and but when the other voice, when your voice of your intuition, your intuitive, your higher self, whatever we want to call it, when that, and I wouldn't even say voice, when that is present, it feels much bigger, much quieter, much more simple. And
there's a surety around it.
there's a certain, yes, there is just a knowing. It is just a knowing. There's no judgment, nothing. It's just, wow.
So, in your opinion, is creativity something that every one of us needs to embrace in order to live a happy life?
Dear, I mean, I don't know. I really don't know. And I know that for a lot of people, you know, other people will process in other ways. So other people's, like, for example, I know somebody who does the Brazilian jiu-jitsu, the whatever you call that.
Yeah.
Is it Brazilian jiu-jitsu or something like that?
Jiu-jitsu, the kind of
Yeah.
fighting. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And he says that
Mm,
satisfies his creativity. So like that, now that to me is not my idea of a good time. I don't ever want, my creativity will never be satisfied when like going for a jog. Put it that way. Like if we're running, I'm not having a good time. There's
yeah.
something wrong. So, but I do know that some people
For some people, it's their
experience what I
connection
just
to.
said. Yes, that is their vessel, their vehicle, their container that connects them to their higher self, the voice of their higher self, or their knowing or their clarity. For me, it's, you know, using my hands and specifically making art and expressing myself.
Mm.
Um,
And
for other
art for
people,
you, is that, as you say, vehicle to get in touch with that part of yourself.
yeah, absolutely, it really is. Like I could go walking and all that, but for some reason, my mind gets even louder when I'm out walking. At times, at most times. So you know, so everybody will have their thing. So should everybody do it? Yeah, everybody. I have to answer this with a caveat. Like everybody, can I say everybody should? It would be great if everybody did, but there are certainly, and we all
Mm.
know them, people walking through this world who will never be awake in ways that, you know, you just encounter them and you're like,
And
how
maybe
much
that's not their
ever,
journey.
yeah, like, do you know, like it's just, and so does everybody need creativity and should everybody have it? It would be great if everybody did. I don't know why everybody doesn't. I don't know why there are people who, you know, are here and seem to go back without having asked a single fucking question of themselves or of life. You know, I don't get that. But
Yeah.
why,
And
I'm not
for
obviously
some, it's
supposed to.
fear. It's fear of opening up, I think. Some it's just complete unconsciousness,
Oh,
and
yeah. Yeah.
a lack of awareness.
Yeah.
Do you say that you're in recovery, Amanda? Is that the right language, or how do you
So
describe?
that would have been, yeah, that has changed over time. But how I've always kind of thought of recovery was as a two-phased, like a parallel process. So I see recovery as being something that, a recovery of. So, the recovery of the person I am underneath my conditioning, or the recovery of the person I could have been, I am beyond this story. So there's a recovery of something happening. It's a search and rescue mission, first and foremost. And then there's the other part is the recovery from. So it is the recovery from the different traumas that were part of that journey. It's a recovery from the coping that was relied upon or that developed as you were going through life masking as this person that you thought you were supposed to be. Um, and, at a very, great cost to yourself. And chances are you developed some coping, and now there's going to have to be a recovery from that. So, like for me, for example, there's been alcohol, there's been cigarettes, there's probably lots of other things, definitely codependency. There's other things I could probably, you know, uh, I could probably turn collecting pennies into some sort of you know,
An
like a
addiction.
problem. Eh, eventually it'll be a problem. So it's like, am I in recovery? In that sense, yes. I have been on a recovery mission for a long time, and I have been in recovery from the various woundings that I have both discovered and also, um, you know, um, let's say, created, experienced on the way. Um, and I probably always will be, But I've played around with the idea of, the whole language around um, sobriety and things like that. So
Mm,
I'm alcohol free 9 years in June this year. This 2026.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And and then I also quit cigarettes a couple of months after alcohol. So that's also 9 years this year. But I had a relapse, and that was a 2 year, relapse back into the cigarettes. And there was several failed attempts to quit during those 2 years. But I'm now, I think, about 14 months quit from that. Um, a lot of friendships, a lot of friendships have been lost. Lost is not the right word. Completed.
Yeah.
A lot of them in traumatic ways, not always cleanly.
Mm,
Um, so it's quite the journey. Like I won't say it's dramatic, but there's a line from a Sia song, um, Elastic Heart. And she says in it, I want my life so bad. Like, I'll walk through fire to save my life. And it's kind of like that, every now and again, I surprise myself with what I'm willing to do that I didn't think I would be able to do in pursuit or just in service to this higher voice that goes, yes, no. And that's pretty much it. It's that voice is like, yes, this is good for you. Yes, we like this. No, this is not good for you. I will pretend I don't hear that until it's almost impossible to ignore, because I know what it's asking of me is something that I don't think I can do. Um, but then eventually I've done it. Each time I've done it now, I've waited. And each time I've done it, I've been shocked that I did it. I can't believe I did that. you know? So,
It's
mm,
really interesting because sometimes from the outside, looking at the people who have been through a journey like yours, there seems to be a greater gift on the other side. One that not everybody who, hasn't abused alcohol or had a drug addiction or have been through traumatic, something that people who you might call, normal lives don't get to experience because there isn't enough of a push or a drive to open up
yes.
to, to get to that, let's say,
Yeah.
gift of joy or of peace, or even if it's not pure joy and peace, just that connection to
It
something
really
great.
is. And, there's it can be such a simple thing that stands in the way. Like 4 words, a sentence with 4 words. It's not that bad. Sentence like that, and I only just came across it in my journal the other night. I came across a bunch of sentences I had written in my journal. Now I had written them for I was doing a social media thing. So I needed sentences. So I wrote these sentences and then I recorded my thing and I moved on with my life. But the other night I was going through my journal looking for a spot to do, a little bit of arting. And when I read the sentences, oh my God, my blood ran cold because obviously, I was going through something at the time and it came out in these sentences. And I wasn't there yet. I wasn't there at the point of, so I was using the words. This is the other thing. It's like sometimes like we know so hard, we know it and it's coming up and all that knowing is right there, but we're not acting on our knowing because it's so scary. But anyway, one of the things, like I'll just read a few of them. This one here says, I have to stick to what I agreed to. The other one, here it is there. And for anyone, it's not that bad. That's what this says, even though my camera's backward. It's literally in my journal. It's not that bad, you know?
And was
Yeah.
it that bad?
No, no. I mean, I could have like just like it could have, you know, you could have endured. Which I'm pretty bad at. I'm pretty bad at, just well, I'm good at it until I suck at it, I guess. But I don't know what has to happen. But yeah, for me, it has to get to a point where I am shocked into action or I am propelled into action because I knew and this has happened my pattern is I don't get off the motorway at the correct exit. I keep going, because getting off the motorway at the correct exit feels somehow like going back on something I agree to. It feels somehow like it's going to make me look like a flake or somehow make me going to look inconsistent. So I'm just trying to be consistent with what I said I was going to do. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. No matter what the damage is or how it affects you negatively. That's
Yeah.
what, yeah.
And then sometimes you just kind of really just arrive either at a point of something outside you has to shock you into, and
Mm.
probably so, because like like in physics, it's a natural law, the concept of inertia. Sometimes it can just be that it's like that a concept that an object in motion is more likely to stay in motion than to stop, and the inverse as well. An object at rest is unlikely to start moving unless it is struck from the outside. When 'cause I'm that,
Yeah.
I inertia will be the death of me, kind of a thing. I need something to come from the outside and knock me out of my,
But that's, I
no.
think, with most humans, for me, for years, I remember even seeing this in my mind and thinking it was okay, that my life was pretty much a straight line. But I thought that was good because, okay, I mightn't have great joy or, the most happy experiences, but at least I don't go below the line. too much.
Yeah.
And I remember
Yeah.
thinking that was a good thing,
Yes.
that
Yes.
containing myself in this space. But then, of course, it took me years to realize that emotion is not scary. Emotion is
Mm,
wonderful, and emotion has to move, and we
mm,
will experience, if we allow ourselves, great moments of awe and joy. But if we don't allow ourselves to feel the harder emotions, it's very difficult to feel any emotion, which was
yeah.
where I was stuck in, let's say.
Hmm. Yeah.
So,
And then knowing yourself as well is really good because, like, so that idea of inertia, like, so knowing that in order for anything to happen, it is going to have to, like, I'm going to have to fashion my life that I might collide with something that will knock me out of my position, so you can do things, and the journaling practice will help us. And like you said, like with things like that, just we're sitting at home kind of like bargaining with ourselves and saying, well, so one of the things I've been saying is, but it's so easy. It suits me because it is, it's like I'm bored to death, but also, there's a lot to be said for an easy life.
yeah, yeah, it's
So there is
comfortable,
that. Yeah. And then
even if it's, yeah.
at some point you go, you know what, easy. Maybe there are other ways to create ease that don't rely on me in basically amputating an entire component of my being in order to have ease. Maybe I can start thinking about this in other ways. So yeah, all of those things like journaling is how we examine all of those things and get to know ourselves to the degree that this information added with that information now gives me a bigger mind to discern with, and I'm bringing the body on board and I'm bringing there's a lot now at the table making this decision.
How much have you changed since you were hit by grief? Because I know personally, over the last 2 years since I lost my mum,
Mm,
that again, as we're speaking about these big events in our life, moving us,
mhm,
that I've been cracked open,
mm,
and I think I'm emerging as a different person. Not in a
mm,
massive way, but in a more connected, more present, more in touch with the simplicity and the basicness of what life is about, which to me is love.
mm.
How has that journey been for you?
Well, I'm sorry to hear about your mom. It's 2 years is still so recent, especially, yeah, especially for our moms. I think there's big difference between um losing moms and losing dads. Um, and not necessarily the same, just we have different dynamics with different parents. Um, so how has grief moved me? So I was grieving the loss of my father long before he died, um, because I could see that he was going to die. Um, did not know how, but assumed that he was, like, just he looked like he was going to work himself into the ground. Um, and the way that he died in the end, I don't think anything could have been done about it. But also, he wasn't well enough to get sick. That kind of a way. Um, but like I said, there was nothing that could have been done about it towards the end. But I was grieving because I was watching my dad slowly kill himself. I was in counseling and I was in therapy, preparing for because I knew what would come up. I knew how much was wrapped up in my dad's story, and I knew the he was a very, very powerful force in my life.
Mm,
Very, very big for like he was the space taker upper in our life, and I don't think he ever learned how to share. In some ways, he did. He was the most generous person on the planet, but in other ways, like I only discovered, in this time. In fact, shortly after he died, I reckon that because I'm the oldest, I was the firstborn, but I'm actually not the oldest because my dad was the oldest because my mom had 5 kids.
Okay.
My father was the oldest child, and that dynamic makes more sense to me. I did not have a dad. I had an older brother, a much older brother, who just so happened to be riding me mam. So does that make it weird?
Can we
That,
erase that bit
yeah,
there and
yeah, that's so weird. But anyway, so so
yeah.
I was grieving and I was unpacking shit a good few years before my dad died. And so once he did die, I had arrived at a place of at least uncomplicated. My grief wasn't going to be so complicated now in his passing because I had
Mhm.
unpacked a lot. And then after that, how it has kind of like changed me is that it brought up, and I kind of knew it would. I mentioned it at the eulogy that, you know, the very famous saying that nature abhors a vacuum. And my father was a force of nature, and he took up so much space that there was a vacuum when he left. And I was very curious about what was going to fill this vacuum in my life. How was my life? What was it going to look like without this, massive space taker upper in my life? And so grief has been about really what learning about that space around me, and my relationship to it in the absence of my father. And it has been about me learning all of the ways in which that space is scary, and learning um, how much of that space I was being protected from and how much of that space I was being controlled, just like
Yeah.
so that he didn't have to change how he took up space. So that, and then every now and again I get to grieve just normally in between all of that. So there's all of the exam, like who am I beyond this shadow? And then every now and again I get a pocket of clean grief that I just get to grieve cleanly from my dad, just as a little girl who's lost her dad. And then I go back into, shaking my fist up at the sky, going, "This is your fucking fault. You better," like, you know?
Yeah, yeah. That's fair.
Yeah.
Um, so Amanda, what else is coming for you in the next year or the next short while? What's the plan?
So I have been, since the end of 23, I have been on, let's just say, another chapter of this journey in that, it began at the end of 23 with a burnout, a very significant burnout, and a receding, a kind of a withdrawing from, I stopped pretty much doing a lot of what I was doing. And I went into, I got a job as a barista, and I worked at that for a while. And then another job. So I kind of just like came offline and I went back into the real world, and I got jobs that were, enjoyable, easy to do, predictable, and, did work. But also there's some self work doing, and now I'm coming to a point with that. Uh, a lot has changed, a lot. So, the last 2.5 years have been about following a thread that I didn't really know where it was going. I kind of did, but I also didn't. And where it has took me is one of those places where it's like, I can't believe I did that. Like, I actually cannot believe that I did that. So that's the one that I'm not ready to talk about yet. I will be in time, but things are changing, and I feel an energy coming back now for my work. Um, so, I'm picking up the pace with
Mm,
offering journaling classes on or journaling sessions online again, just tending to my community online again, tending to my, Substack and, um, I have, been podcasting. I was podcasting for a year there with my sister. Life started to happen with her, and that has kind of, um, come to an end. I was podcasting with Dr. Melissa Kelly. We had a sober podcast. She since got married and had just had a brand new baby, so life is lifing for her too. But I have another podcast on the Verge, and this one is going to be collaboration with two other artists, and we're very excited about it. It'll be fun. It'll be deep. It'll be honest, and so that's coming. I have some online lessons coming. So my art journaling, I'm going back into that. And I'm just really going to focus on my journaling now as a practitioner and as a holder of space and a teacher of the process. Yeah, that's
amazing.
yeah.
Well, I definitely want to hear about those, and I'll be signing up. It's
Ew.
taken what was it, 2020? Taken 6 years for me to actually. But I do have my own journals now, so I've somewhere to create my art.
And have you got your own journals, Ciara? Do you mean you've published your own?
Yeah, yeah. So they're just plain
Wow.
journals for doing the
Yeah.
work that I've been doing with women. And they're a kind of companion to my planner, my life flow
Amazing.
planner.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, no, I'll definitely be signing up as soon as those
Yeah.
offers go out, Amanda.
Yeah.
Um,
And
and
lots more to
any
come. The chapter that is currently being written is like plot twist of the century, and I am just like, how am I going to tell this story? But I'll get there. I'll
well,
get there.
you have Sally Murphy to help you tell a
True.
good story, huh?
True.
But no, that sounds very exciting, and I'm very intrigued. But just I love that idea of, and it's something that I have thought of so many times when I feel stressed, when I feel this isn't going the way I want it to go, is going to Spain and working in a coffee shop.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's been one of my things I've had in my back pocket. And I think there's real courage in that, just allowing life to bring you in whatever way you need to go. So yeah, very inspiring. So, Amanda, we will share all your links below in the show notes. And thank you so much for sharing all that you have with us. I'm sure there's a million more things that we could learn from you. I'm definitely feeling inspired. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much, Ciara. It's great to chat with you.